Good evening, everyone, and good morning to those of us in Australia. Saturday morning. Welcome to episode 46 of Something More Than Gibberish. Today, our feature is a lovely young lady from Melbourne, who I had the pleasure of meeting at a open mic. Actually, I was fortunate to see her very first live performance, so I was blessed. And one would not have thought it was her first time on stage. Her name is M. Rose, an absolutely amazing poetess. Her work is from the heart, so brace yourself, you will not be disappointed. Without further ado, I will bring her up and let's get this show on the road. Good morning.
Good morning. How are we going?
Oh, very good, very good. So lovely to see you, and thank you very much.
It's lovely to see you again too. Sorry, my Wi-Fi just dropped out briefly there.
I think that might have been me as well. The really lovely. Thank you for agreeing to feature on the show. I am really, really keen to showcase your work on this platform. It really is. Hope it wasn't too early on a Saturday morning for you.
No, not at all. I've been up for hours, but yeah, no, I'm really happy to be here.
So tell me, tell me about your journey into writing. What started it all off?
Gosh, it's hard to remember now, but I think I've been writing for most of my life, very just in private, in my own time. I actually recently found an old songwriting book that I'd written. My mum gave it to me. I'd written, obviously, when I was a very little kid. I think I might have been 12, and I had this album of songs that I'd written, and I wanted to be a songwriter. And yeah, I guess I've been writing kind of lyrics and things like that and diary entries since I think my first diary entry was grade one, whatever age that might be, 7. And then from there, I've just been writing, but I've only been sharing my poetry since, yeah, about October last year. It's the first time I spoke out loud to anyone, really.
Sorry, how old did you say when you first started socializing your work?
It was only last year, October last year.
Yeah, I was at that show at that evening at Bar Rusu when you came on stage first, and to say that you blew me away. Number one, you first time on stage and you went with a memorized piece. That is phenomenal, and your delivery was second to none.
Oh, thank you so much.
It really, really was. One would not have thought that. I think you surprised the even the host. I think Hamish was quite surprised that, wow, what, this lady's first time on stage ever, really? And I was just taken back with the content of the piece that you recited, and ever since. There are weeks where I've been to Barusu where I don't even feel like getting on stage. I just want to go and listen to people, and I hope in the hope of hearing people like yourself and a few of the others who really recite heartfelt pieces. I'm all up for some of the humorous stuff and things like that, but my sentiments are always those deep emotional pieces that
Mm,
really stimulate our own thoughts, our own
mm.
emotions, and you deliver that every time, which is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. I am trying to expand my writing at the moment. I feel like I'm naturally pulled towards deeper topics and emotional content. But in this journey of trying to expand my writing, I'm trying to learn how to do some lighter topics and some more humorous pieces, but it is a skill in itself because I personally find that really challenging. Yeah, it's not something that comes easily if it's not from my
Yeah.
heart.
And you're right, it's not easy. And sometimes I don't normally dabble too much in very structured poetry because I try not to deviate from the message I want to get across.
Mm,
But I do a lot of shenrus and haikus in 3 lines. What I hope to get out of that is just to stimulate people's thoughts.
mm, mm.
You know what I mean? And when you try to get something in 3 lines with a 5, 7, 5 syllable, it,
It's incredibly challenging and impressive.
yeah, but it's good because some of those smaller, lighter pieces. Matter of fact, last week at Barusu, I just read about 4 little micros because sometimes those micros are very focused, very
Mm,
intentional. There's not much coloring. The message is right there.
yeah.
So yeah, but I am a sucker for a good heartfelt piece. The other thing I guess too is my biasness comes from even with this show. One of the reasons I feature poets like yourself is through the conversations, through your poetry. You don't know who in what corner of the world will see or hear these conversations or your
Mm,
poetry. And sometimes that might be all they need
mm,
to help them in a dark place, to help their thought patterns to evolve and get them out of that dark hole that they find themselves in,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why most people I bring on the show are generally people who got very emotionally, or poems with emotional depth.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah. So what's the plan? You still got ambitions to write music?
No, I don't think I will move into music. I think I got I was writing music because I hadn't yet found poetry, I think. But I first of all, I'm a terrible singer. And second of all, I liked that I could do different lengths with poetry. I feel like music, in a sense, there is a minimum length to it. So it's kind of sitting at that, 2, 3, 4 minute marks, which a lot of my works do go for about that length of time. But recently I've been doing a lot more micro pieces, like you said, and really seeing how I can create a concept in 2 or 3 lines. I think is really powerful. So from here, I'm really interested in learning different styles of poetry. I've never studied poetry. I've never studied writing. I don't know any of the formal frameworks. So that's, I guess, something where I'm really eager to lean into now and to understand the different styles that people are writing within.
Yeah. Um, I myself don't follow any structure because, as I said, I don't want to be limited by the number of lines, by rhyme scheme, so forth, if it deviates from the emotion I want to convey. So it's great that you want to um, look into studying, but my advice: stay stay true to what's in your heart,
Mm,
what you
mm,
feel in your heart, put down in words. And I try to keep even my language very simple because I want to target people who are quite well educated in literature and
yeah.
a person where English might be a second language. I want
Mm,
because everybody doesn't matter what level of education or where your um, situation in life is, everybody deserves to find happiness, contentment, peace in their heart.
mm.
That's my view.
It's really interesting that you say that actually, because when I first started writing, when I was I had a decent couple of pieces, and then I got a bit of imposter syndrome and going, I don't think my vocabulary is advanced enough. I don't think I've got a broad enough use of language, and I was really doubting myself because I felt like there wasn't enough complexity to the words I was using. And then I just had this moment where I was like, no, I really like to read and to write in a way that is just the message is point blank. It is so clear. It's not written work. I like my work to be spoken. So I think written work, you have a bit more space to read over it and digest and really go, okay, why did they use that word? But for spoken word, I think it's got to hit you straight away. You don't need to think too much about it. And so now I've got a lot more confidence in using that.
That, that is actually a very interesting point. Never considered that. Yes, you're right. Because I know when I hear poets, I hear some beautiful work recited on stage or on Instagram, on lives. But I get stuck on one or two powerful lines. Meanwhile, three or four other lines have gone off, and you
Mm.
miss half the poem. That's why
Yes.
I like reading them over and
Mm,
over because each time
mm,
I read them, it triggers off different thoughts, and I get different things from the poem. So that's interesting, actually. I never thought about it because I don't write for the stage came secondary to me
mm.
because I've got a couple of books out, and mine's more the written content where people flick through to a page and read something that's relevant to them at the time. But interesting, I never even thought about writing stuff for stage as
Mm.
opposed to for a book. So that's interesting, actually. That's very, very wise of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in my mind, it's the difference between like, really unpacking what the difference is between, say, slam poetry and your spoken word and your written poetry. And it's just those different, yeah, methods of delivery and that they in themselves are distinct for a reason.
Yeah. So you mentioned slam. Is there plans to start competing in some of the slam events around Melbourne?
So I have competed in the APS, the Australian Poetry Slam competition. Um, so that was actually the first time I read USO in front of a crowd was the first time I'd gone to an open space, which was about a month later. So I went to actually a poetry workshop. This is how it all started. I went to a workshop. I was never interested in reading in public. I just wanted to refine my piece. And so I was workshopping a piece and then I read it to the facilitators who were the previous champions. And they were like, you absolutely have to compete tomorrow. It was the next night. They were like, you have to read this on stage. And I was like, I can't do that. So I somehow mustered up the strength and I had a promise to my previous partner around that I would read once in front of people. So I thought, okay, this is where I'll do it. And I got on stage and at the regional comp and then won that and went on to then the state comp. And I read there, which I think I scored 9.5 out of 10 and came in fourth place. So I didn't go on to the nationals. And I truly thought that was the end of it. I wasn't going to read after that. I thought I've done my two pieces. I don't need to do any more. And then I met a few people and then I found USO and I decided I would just go and watch. And yeah, it was kind of a slippery slope from there, to be honest.
You have just blown my mind. So your very first live performance was a slam competition.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And
I
by
absolutely
accident.
take my hat off to you. Hey, and not only did you your first debut recital on stage to a live audience was at a slam competition, you won that, and then you went on to represent the state in the state comp.
Yeah.
You went on that. That is phenomenal. And
It was pretty wild.
look, I totally admire but that, yes, you might have had the butterflies and all that, and that's normal, and that's good. That's actually a good thing, because that eustress, like an athlete feels before a race, is a good thing. It's the
Mm,
de-stress that where that negatively feeds back. That's not the good kind of stress, right?
exactly, yeah.
Eustress is very good, uh, but that speaks to me of your inner strength
Mm,
and your inner belief in yourself and your confidence to be able to agree to go on at a competition level
mm.
and make your debut recital. That really speaks a lot of you, Em. It really does.
Thank you. I'm not sure that it comes down to my confidence because I think if it was on my own accord, if I was driving things myself, I tend to not. I am quite a private, quite a recluse person. But when I've made either promises or someone's asked me to do something, that ignites a secondary motivator for me. Where I go, if I need to do it for someone else, easy, I can take on anything.
You just you just in one sentence gave the whole narrative of how the universe works in our life, right? We all get stuck. We all, why would I get out and go and put myself out
Mm,
there? That the circumstances was put in my way to get me to do it. And I've found in hindsight, looking back at my many years of life, I actually find that is how the universe works.
mm.
Right?
We have a lot more compassion and I think care for other people than we do ourselves. So it's interesting because now I'm also trying to go, okay, but at what point do I offer myself that as well and try and make promises to myself and then follow through on those promises to myself?
Yes, yes. But uh, but I would not take away from your willingness to step out on a limb.
Mm,
And as they say, to get the best fruit, you have to step out on a limb. And
mm,
something that we all, doesn't matter where our station in life is, need constant reminder because it's very easy to get stuck in our comfort zone.
I agree.
Right? It's very hard to step out of the norm, and that's what promotes growth,
Mm,
inner growth.
mm.
I mean, I see the M that I see, like last week at Barusu. By the way, I absolutely loved that piece that you recited. It ripped my heart out. It was so relatable. It's never easy. Doesn't matter how many years you've been together, even if you've spent 50 ripe old years with your partner, it's never easy to lose somebody, let alone when you're so young. And
Mm.
both my friend who was over there, Angela Sam, who'll be featuring in a couple of weeks, a month's time, we just both, our jaws dropped. And the way you delivered it, the emotion that you of your the emotion conveyed in your recital, the cadence, everything. I mean, it was a fairly busy night at Barusu, but everything ceased to exist for me. All I was seeing was you on stage and hearing your words. It really was.
Thank you so much. That was the first piece I've ever shared that was unfinished.
Mm,
That yeah, I guess was raw, was not refined, was not rehearsed. Usually I've rehearsed them over and over and over and I've really like picked them apart. But that one, as I said that night, I decided I didn't want to spend any more time on it. I needed to leave it alone. And it was incredibly, I think, exposing to share a piece that, I hadn't looked at a lot.
yeah, yeah. Um, do you go to any other events besides Barusu around Melbourne?
I have, well, not regularly. I have gone to once-offs here and there. Um, and yeah, a few like kind of singular events, but I've got a few flagged that I really want to go check out.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, working everything in as we all are, just juggling multiple things at once.
It does. I'd usually try to get to the Motley Brow House on a Wednesday as well. That just in Elgin Street in Carlton. That's a good event. And also every second Wednesday, Vibe Union, who now moved to the Bar Creatures of Habit.
Yeah.
That's a really nice vibe there. And the guys who run it, Ryan, Jason, they're really lovely and really good crowd. So highly recommend those two as well.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll definitely try and check them out.
Yeah. Shall we get into some now? Before we go on, just remember this hour and a half, hour and three quarter, whatever, is purely about showcasing you, the poet, showcasing your work, and it's all about you. So feel free. There's no restrictions. Run with any direction you like about showing. I want people in every corner of the world to know who M. Rose is in her poetry, what she writes, why she writes. Because I was mind blown when I first met you through your poetry. It was quite a few months after I had been listening to you regularly there that I even approached you about coming
Mm,
on the show. Well, we even spoke. I hadn't even spoken to you before, other than a wave or hi,
mm.
because I just watch and study people because I want to know the depth of their work before I invite them onto the show. And I want the rest of the world to have that pleasure of that I got, and I continue to get in hearing your performances each week. So,
Thank you so much.
so this hour and a half, hour and three quarter, whatever, just under 2 hours, only because Instagram, the archive messes up if I go longer than 2 hours. Now, I also download this and I create a YouTube video, and then I also create a podcast on Spotify, which I'll send you the links and you can use it any which way you like. So that is why I try to keep it under 2 hours. So then when I download the archive, it's in one file.
Mm.
Any corruptions. So it's the stage is all yours. If I'm talking too much, tell me to shut up, and you just run any direction you like, right?
Not at all.
So
I love your input.
and what you share, what you elect to share with this global platform, it's all up to you. So shall we get into some of your poetry?
We can jump into it.
Now, folks in the room, thank you for coming in and supporting Am and myself on this show. Without you, it's, as I say each week, it's very hard for the feature to give off themselves, and your welcoming warmness is what helps them to give more. And trust me, folks, brace yourself. You are going to be mind blown with this lady's work.
Beautiful. All right. Well, seeing as we have been chatting about my journey into poetry and how that all eventuated, perhaps I'll share the first piece that I actually ever spoke. And you'll see that my work kind of gets a little bit more confident and longer as I go on through my poetry, as I started writing more and more. So this piece was written probably about 6 months, perhaps after my partner had passed away. And the context of that was she was an incredible artist, really, really talented, talented beyond belief, self-taught, wasn't practicing as an artist, just something she did for fun. And I recall one night laying in bed, she was on a rant at about 1 a.m. talking about color theory. And I myself, I'm not an artist. I don't paint. I don't know anything about visual art. And so she was explaining to me the difference between every different color shade of, say, purples and greens. And in particular, there was this color dioxide purple, which she said, I never ever paint with black. I will never paint with black in my life. I use dioxide purple because it has warmth. It adds depth to a painting where black cuts it short. And so we would talk about that often. But dioxide purple looks black. It's a very, very dark purple. Okay, so we'll go on. You painted pictures of me, of things I never thought were there. Dioxide purple to capture our depth. I called it black, but you never dare. For black implied darkness, flatness, and bleak, where you saw warmth and wonder if they just took time to see. You like phthalo green because it signified growth, moss covering burnt skin from those who hurt us the most. Prussian blue for the tides and the waves that surrounded you, shaped by disturbance and clarity, you captured each and every virtue. But since you've gone, truthfully, my world feels a little beige. No longer canvas or art, I revert back to stone and grey. I know one day I'll hold you, and there'll be an end to all the suffering. In a different place, you'll paint me again, because souls don't dance for nothing.
The first two lines, you painted pictures of me of things I never knew were there. That is so much, and that is what a good, healthy bond, whether it's a friendship, whether it's an emotional relationship, whatever, whether it's even a work relationship, that's what life should be, right? About seeing your reflection in me help you to see you, and seeing reflections of me in you, or every interaction I have to see me, to look in a mirror with every person I meet. That is just absolutely phenomenal, Em, and this is why I love your work. And burn skin from when others hurt you, you know. We live such a charade in so many times, and that charade is to mask the scars of the past. And we all do it universally. It doesn't matter what culture, creed, status in life you come from. The the depth of that piece, that's, oh my God, that blows me away. See, now that's a classic piece. In I was so caught up in those first two lines, my mind was running, shit, how true is that? You know, I missed so many other good lines in there, I'm sure. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? This is where, yeah, I I love that you write things for delivering on stage in live performance, but on my hope is that whether it's on an Instagram page, whether it's eventually in a book, that your work is published somewhere. Because I think the piece like you just restarted is there's no uh, time span on that. That is
Mm.
endless. That is something that my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, my great grandchildren will be able to relate to. It's
Mm.
timeless.
Thank you. That means so much. And I guess it's fitting for me to probably tell you the second part of the deal. So when I decided to read my writing, it was I would say it was probably 1 week before my partner had passed away, and it was the first time I'd shared some work,
Mm.
and she was like, she was kind of at me being like, you need to share it, you need to share it. And I was like, no, 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 I write for me. I don't want to write for anyone else. And we were bickering in a way, in a playful way. And the deal was, she was like, okay, you read once on stage and I'll get off your back. And you write a book and you produce one copy, just one copy that will exist that we have. And then that's it. And the whole thing, I remember we were sitting in the car and she was saying, you'll write the words and I'll do the art design because she was an artist. And what we'll do is we'll put every text slightly off center, an inch to the left. And all the art critics will go, what did she mean by that? And what we meant was none of your business.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were laughing and giggling. And so that's why my page is called Slightly Off Centered. And I've toyed with the idea of, yeah, putting them together in a book and just producing one singular copy. So
Uh,
that may be where it lands. We'll
I
see.
I respect and accept your privacy and your intimacy and keeping it to yourself. But really, I think your words, there's a world full of people who need to hear. There's a couple of good friends of mine in the room there, Butterfly and me. So her comment there, such beautiful lines. And a good friend of
Mhm.
mine, Tom Barrow, he's just released his fourth book. Each book is about 450 plus pages. He's a experienced writer, and his comment there, powerful and amazing imagery, you know, and that is, your work is really, really second to none. It's really powerful, profound. There's so much depth to it. You got
Thank you.
no idea how many people who've followed a similar circumstances, but even without a loss, people in relationships, in a healthy relationship, that could get from just that piece you read. Don't underestimate the power of your words.
Thank you. That means that I'm very much learning and trying to challenge myself out of that small box that I like to exist in. So this may change. I never thought I would be reading weekly at USO if you asked me this last year when I said I'll speak once. So who's to say where we'll end up?
Well, I live in hope. Live in hope because your words really need to be heard out there. They really do.
Thank you. All right. I will read. I think what I'll do is I'll read um, the second grief piece that I wrote after that, and then I think I'll go into some other stuff, and perhaps we will finish with the unfinished one that I read last week.
Now,
Um,
a comment here by J underscore A underscore R underscore E 365. In a world of platforms, articulation is crucial. You know,
mm,
there you go. There, your your words. Honestly, it's touching people from all corners of the world and earning the respect it deserves. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'll read this second piece, which was written shortly after we were boxing up her property. And, for anyone who's had to do that, it's a incredibly emotional, challenging, confronting, confusing process to go through. Um, and so this I wrote in the span of about 3 minutes, to be honest. I remember I was walking my dogs and it was sunrise and it just all came out and I recorded it on my phone really quickly and it just wrote itself from start to finish. So, okay. How is it possible to condense her into boxes? Picture frames and memories, each scrunched up note, electric shocks that she was here. Her messed up sheets like my messed up heart. It's a mix of regret and some catharsis. The hardest part is trying to find closure, what to hold close and what to let go. And yes, I know that she'd want me to move forward. The only person I shared my poem, she made me promise her that I'd show him, so here I am. And I'm so exposed, but so is she. We go through her clothes and all her things. Our privacy now out of reach, we've lost our secret sanctuary amongst this grief. Her life is laid out on the pavement. My heart's laid out on this stage and surrounding flies, they're trying to watch my shape-shifting pain, the peaks and troughs, and I've had enough. But grief's a process. And there's no timeline, there's no prognosis. I find relief, it comes back to choke us, just need to focus on each small step, each new beginning. Some chapters start and some are ending, but I'm done pretending that I'm not breaking. Every time that I see her paintings, I still show her off. And I'll fill it all and I'll let it flood. Love in my veins, cleansing my blood. And when I'm ready, I'll take that box, tape up my pain and set it down and I'll say goodbye.
That one needs to breathe. That's how do you box up a lifetime of memory?
Yeah, it was a very, very challenging process and something I would not want anyone to do, but in a sense there was something beautiful about it because I still got to learn things about her that I didn't know, when I thought I knew almost everything. And I was finding things being like, what is this?
Her paintings sound amazing. Love to see them one day if I get the chance. They really sound amazing.
Yeah, of course I'll show you. They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. They're truly beautiful.
The I through my own experience, I don't find it any easier whether your span of time is short or long. I lost my father when I was 12, and I lost my mum 8 years ago. So I had many years. But each one, while the ceremony is all happening and you're planning the funeral, etc., the grief hits you, but you get through it. But when it's finished and you come back, and then the reality of it all hits hard. That packing
Yeah.
up part is so hard and so relatable. There's a comment there by Butterfly and me saying she was here as you were reading. This lady is obviously a sensitive, but she also says that peace is healing. It is, and she's right because gaining that closure, you'll never forget, and you shouldn't forget. We'll always. 50 years later, I'm still holding my father dear in my heart. I'll never forget, but life has to go on, and to be able to park that grief in that little compartment in our heart and continue to live our life to blossom in our own right is a necessity.
Absolutely. And I was actually saying the other day, I was like, grief doesn't go away, but you learn to move with it.
Yes.
And I think that's where I landed, is that it will never go away, but you learn to exist.
And for me as a human, um, just in our brief interactions, I'm so glad that that sort of a mishap sometimes can leave somebody very bitter towards life and very untrustworthy of life as we know it, hasn't in you, and that is beautiful. It really is. You've used that grief as fertilizer for you to blossom as a flower, as a person, and that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely shown me a lot more perspective about life, and it's shown me things about myself that I needed to confront. And in a sense, it's been both the worst year and the best year in
Mm,
one, because it also made me go, okay, I need to really prioritize my healing and look at any places that needed to be cut off or stepped away from. And now it's all just about things that top me up, things that make me feel good, things that I want to invest in, things that invest in me. And as a result of that, I've got some of the best people in the world surrounding me. My life, everything I do, I'm trying to do with intention and passion. Where beforehand I was pretty closed off and just doing things mindlessly just because I felt I should do them. And I don't do things because I feel I should anymore.
mm, mm. And continue to blossom, continue to be you. Here's a beautiful comment. The length of life is no indication of impact. My girl lived only 8 years, and yet my mother was in my life 57 years, and neither loss was felt any less than the
Mm,
other minutes or 10 years they lived. And that is so true. You know, that really is so true.
yeah.
Um,
And
the
my condolences to everyone here that has lost someone and can relate to that grief.
yeah, the you can see what I said before. Here's a classic of why I do this show and the people I elect to feature on the show. Do you know how many millions of people that could be in any corner of the world who have lost someone after a brief time or a long time, or who are stuck behind that grief and can't move forward? I myself was stuck behind. My father passed away on the 21st of December, so for many years I couldn't enjoy Christmas. Somehow it would start eating at me as Christmas was coming on. And I wanted to, someday I didn't have kids or anything at the time, and someday when I had kids, I wanted to give them as good a Christmas as mum and dad always strive to give us. Doesn't matter how hard their times were, even in their simple way, they tried to give us a most joyous Christmas. And I wanted to do that for my family when I eventually had one.
Mm,
So I remember I was 27 years old and I went up in the Warburton Hills, just had dehydrated food and fruit and a couple of books, and I just hiked for 2 weeks. Did not see any humans, did just camp by a creek. This is before Warburton even got developed. And if I wanted to yell out and scream and cry, I screamed and cried. If I wanted to sit there silently sobbing, I silently sobbed. And I let out all that pain that I'd bottled up. And when I came back off the ranges, from then on, I was able to enjoy Christmas.
mm,
Because at home, when you're eating, there was always a mother or a sister to put their arms around and say, "It's all right, it'll be all right." Well, out there in the wilderness on my own, when I cried, there was nobody to put their arm around me and say it'll be all right.
mm,
And for two and a half weeks, I was there. When I left, my mother wanted me home so much for Christmas, but I left her crying and I took off.
mm.
But the best thing I ever did, and since I came back, um, I was able to. Otherwise, because this was festering in me, I would sometimes, quite often, create an argument, create some unpleasantness, create some havoc, just to because I did not want to accept Christmas Day anymore.
And that's it. I think if you don't release pain and you don't release that, it comes out
Yeah,
one way or another. I remember someone saying, uh, you have no choice as to whether or not you release it. You have the choice as to where.
yeah,
So if you don't do it in the space that you choose, it will come out at a place that you don't choose.
Yeah, and this is why now as through this discussion we're having right now, I can see another Giles, another Rainier in some corner of the world who can get wisdom and get healing from your words, from your piece.
Mm.
You see why I do this? What I was saying at the start as to why I do this and the people I select for it. Butterfly Me's just said grief is a silent struggle that is hardly spoken of.
Mm.
The healing process can be gruesome to our hearts. The beauty is that we continue to blossom along the way. That's exactly what I said to you before.
Mm.
Some people get stuck by that, um, behind that pain, and that's where they remain. They just stagnate and don't continue to blossom. Whereas from my old point in life, when I see somebody young like you who did not get stifled by that pain, but continue to blossom, continue to be the person you are, continue to be better and better each day, and sharing your pain and sharing your grief and helping. That's very rewarding,
Mm.
you know. So
Thank you. Oh, I guess following this conversation as well, I might actually read this piece, which was about, and it sounds like we can all relate, which is when you haven't released that pain and you haven't processed and you are just walking around red hot,
mm,
walking around a loaded gun. It's coming out in different places. You're struggling to be in spaces. The whole world is against you. You're angry. You're just walking around holding it. And that's what I found through. There was a time where I just remember I was irritated every time I drive. I was angry. If the line was taking too long, I was angry. And I'm not someone who's easy to work up. I'm not someone who gets road rage or, I'm pretty happy just existing in the world. But I was going off at everyone. I was going off at friends. I was so angry all the time. Um, and so this piece, I guess, speaks to that experience. Sadness, poison, passion. I'm not resisting now, I'm just trying to listen to the venom in my vein, observing teardrops where they stain, because I'm just trying to break free of these prisons where we swallow all our words, so well acquainted with repression. Turn the looking glass outwards so I don't have to learn this lesson. Say I'm surrounded by betrayal, but note the wreckage in my wake. And I sat with my carnage long enough to know the real driver was pain. Pain in different uniforms with sweet seductive whispers. She's twisting all my narratives and changing all my history. She says to me, your enemies are the ones that you keep close. And if you cut yourself before you bleed, you'll never have to lose. So I walk around a loaded gun, my bullets filled with loneliness, my fingers on the trigger and I'm pointing at the innocent. I figure this is just my karma, could have been kinder when I wasn't. And I'm responding to the past and future and anything but the present. My reflection is confronting, it's discomfort in its finest. But comfort and growth can't coexist, so I just can't keep hiding. I take on the mirror, I don't see pride, only dissatisfaction. So I'll be accountable beyond all else, because inaction's still an action. So I lower down my shoulders and I soften my jaw. Release my knuckles with my ego, and I breathe it out once more. Shake off these circumstantial shackles, and I tell myself this truth. When the whole world seems to piss you off, the chances are it's you.
oh hell, such profound truths in that. And believe me, I walked that path. I'm I'm surprised I'm alive through my teen years and adolescent years and through my early adulthood. I was a walking cannon, you
Mm,
know. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I'm surprised that I'm still alive. Um, and looking in hindsight, exactly what you just said is what I lived, and the fruitless sort of path, the self-destructive path I was on, was who was I trying to hurt?
Exactly. Probably yourself.
Yeah. And it wasn't the people that were doing it to me, it was me doing it to me.
Mm. It it was actually, and that last line there, when the whole world seems to piss you off, the chances are it's you. I remember that was something my mum used to say to me when I was younger. I would come home and I would be ranting and raving about all these different things. And this person did this and this person did this. And she'd just say, you know what? When the whole world's pissing you off, it's probably you. You need to look at yourself. You need to see what you're sitting with. And it used to infuriate me when I was younger.
Yeah.
And now, I guess, having that level of insight, I go, oh, yeah, when suddenly I'm having a bad day and every single thing is going wrong, that's a time to look at me.
You got, I don't know if you're getting a chance to read some of these comments. The love you are getting is amazing there. Tom DeSaro, as I said, who's a seasoned poet with four massive books under his belt, over 2,000 pages in those four books. Outstanding flow and message. Um, the Yaru, the last line, he wants that on a t-shirt.
Happily.
Uh, it's
I think the
really,
world could use to see that as we walk around angry.
but that's so true. But even to when we see that writing that we're wearing on, it's a good reminder for us, right?
Yeah,
It's not the
yeah.
world is angry at you, you're angry at the world. It's your inner reflection that's coming out in your physical views of
Perception. Yeah.
it. Right? We all need reminding that. I still today, even after my many years of wise old years, I still find myself sometimes at work or something like that, and I'm going, hang on a minute, calm down, you know.
Yeah, I often am telling myself that on a daily basis.
Here you go. Flawed of Fabulous LC. Fabulously. Uh, that was a great analogy. I used to get, you are your own worst enemy. I used
Mm,
to get offended. She gets it now.
mm.
Yeah. And it's
Thank
so
you.
true. I am very guilty of that. I still am guilty of that. I am my worst enemy.
Mm,
I'm my worst critic. I don't know how to take a compliment, be it at work or be it in my creative writing or something. I'm used to giving. I still struggle when somebody says, "Oh, that was awesome." I
mm,
go, "Oh, yeah, just flip it off." You know what I mean?
mm.
But
And
yeah,
I think we live in a world often where it's not seen to be a good thing if you are proud of your own work. You know, we live in a world that people expect you to be subdued, except when you move into creative, supportive spaces where people want you to be, to be proud and help you to recognize your own strengths. So I think it's something lots of people can relate to.
Em, you're a wise young lady. You really are.
Thank
And yes, it is what the universe has put in your pathway so far.
you.
But we can go to school, but we can refuse to learn or not learn what we're supposed to.
Mm,
Similarly,
mm,
we can live in life and things keep happening and the same things keep happening. We keep falling in the same hole over and over again because we don't refuse to learn. But you, my young friend, you seem to go within and really see the profound lesson in whatever life puts in your way. And that is the essential ingredient for success. And I don't mean success necessarily in a corporate world or materialistic
mm,
world. I mean success in your soul's growth,
mm.
in your soul's blossoming, in living its purpose that it came down to. You
Yeah.
are walking the path that you were born to walk.
I feel aligned to it now. I think I wasn't for a long time.
Me, I'm in one side a very extroverted person, and the other side of me is this very introverted person. And for years, if I'm 20 years ago, or if somebody had said where I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would have
Mm,
said, dreaming, mate.
mm,
You know, I was just that wild animal, you know. Uh, Now I would go out of my way to go and save an innocent life, or
Mm.
uh, make sure um, justice prevails.
I heard someone say the other day, in a different context, but it was you have a lesson to learn. Your choices are whether you learn it now or you learn it later.
Yep, exactly, exactly, and that's so true. I'm sure you've met people where the same thing happens to them in their life, and you wonder why.
Mm,
Because they refuse to learn. They fall in a hole, get up, and then they do the same thing.
mm,
I'm quite happy to fall in a hole again, but a different hole, another lesson.
mm, mm. Or a slightly less deep hole.
Yeah, well, there's that. But honestly, the amount of respect you're getting there, like the commentary is amazing. Society teaches a forced humility, whether or not it's genuine, right?
Mm,
There is so much love and respect in this audience here for your work, for your words, for your pieces, and I really love the Curly Nikki, she has a very spiritual sort of view on life, and also does lives and all prayer readings and so forth. As she said, she's done with the holes.
done with the hose. I like it. Love that intention.
Look, as I often say to my son, uh, the day I'll stop learning, or the day I'll stop falling in holes, is the day I'll start fertilizing the daisies and stop breathing. You know what I mean? Because I think life is a series of lessons, continuous lessons in some form or the other.
Mm,
You know, um, but it takes strength. It takes strength to actually, and it takes wisdom to learn from things that happen in our life, be it not necessarily a painful tragedy, even something good happens in our life.
absolutely.
It's easy to lose ourselves in our ego and say, "Oh wow, yeah," but there's lessons to be learned even in that.
Mm, in all things, lessons in all things.
How do you learn? How do you deal with power? That in itself is a lesson to learn.
Mm,
If I had a gun in my hand right now, how would I deal with a situation as opposed to if I didn't have a gun?
yeah. And I think, something that I'm constantly aware of is when there's different power in relationships, and that doesn't need to be self-imposed power, but recognizing that, you know, perhaps if you're an articulate person, a person that can communicate their mind, that is a power that you might have over someone who struggles with their words. And you need to be aware of that in a conversation, that we're not dominating or we're not creating a space that they can't get their message
Of
across.
course.
It can be power in anything that we're having to learn to navigate.
And that's very, like, I can speak just from my own experience because I only see life through my eyes. I am a very compassionate person. I'll walk 1,000 miles to go and help somebody.
Mm,
But I'm also a very strong persona, and I can very easily crush somebody through my words and through my um, strength of character. So, in a relationship or in a friendship, even in a work business relationship, I've got to be conscious
mm,
about the power of my um, what I can do through my interactions without even laying a hand on somebody, that I don't crush or humiliate them or stifle them from their growth, because everybody has something to offer
mm,
in a work situation, in a friendship, and we meet once a week at places like Barusu, and there's poets from all different walks of life there, from different experiences in life, and it's some of the newcomers who are very timid, and they all got something to offer, and it's very important that somebody of a strong character doesn't crush that or stifle that, right? But
yeah.
offer that encouragement. So dealing with power and dealing with success, even, how many people do you see who have the world at their feet? Look at some of
Mm,
the footballers. Look at Ben Cousins, for example. The guy had the world at his feet, but he didn't know how to handle that success.
mm, mhm.
So, yeah, there's lessons in everything in life, everything from success and from pain. So, yeah.
I really appreciate that our conversation is flowing very nicely into some different pieces that I'd flag to share. And I think this is probably a smooth transition into a positive lesson. And talking about, that passing down of, you mentioned like passing down lessons to your children and getting lessons from me, from my mother. And so this piece I wrote for my nana. And my nana is now 93. She is an incredible woman, and her and I have had a very, very deep connection. I think we have similar minds, and for whatever reason, we just have a very deep soul connection. Mind you, she has, I think, 37 grandchildren. So we're from a very, very big family. For a period of time, I lived with them. And I remember this one distinct moment that I was younger and I was in a lot of distress. I've always felt things really strongly and was in a lot of distress. And I was in the car crying by myself. And we were at her house and no one could get me out of the car. And I remember she walked up, she got in the front seat, I was in the back seat. And she just said, your mind looks just like mine. And she got out of the car and she walked into the house. And I just instinctively followed her in. We didn't say another word to each other. That's all we
Mm,
did. Um,
mm,
and so when I lived with her, she was teaching me how to cook her secret recipes, and she was helping me just, yeah, with different things. And my nana is a very devoted Catholic, and I am not overly aligned with that, but we love each other so dearly despite, any kinds of differences. So
that's
this is hers.
that's awesome that you have got that kind of bond within it. Does she live locally in Melbourne or like close to you
She,
very
it
often?
takes me about half an hour to get there.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
too bad. Although now, because of her age, she is starting to, her memory's kind of not getting as good. And so I'm really trying to take in those precious learnings and moments when I
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
All right. My nana had a secret recipe, a way to bring the family together in a way that didn't matter whose life had turned out better. Instead, my nana went to church as religiously as she would bake her apple pie and make you take a slice home along with her faith, just like a letter, reminding me she was there amongst the hardship. A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. I held on tight to all these concepts in a deeper way. When the world's patience I had exceeded, couldn't find my place in society, she said to me, come on over, I've got a secret. I'm getting older and I can't keep it. I need to pass on these recipes, and we made a pile. 1 cup flour, 2 cups clarity. She made certain that the world had space for me. I said that I'm trying, I just don't work that way. And she said, that's okay, you're just a different flavor. Let me teach you how to substitute so you can take what you've got and make it work for you. They'll see the outcome, but we'll change the process. And I promise you this, you'll feel a little less hopeless. Care less towards most things, but I cared about that. Just trying to quantify how much is a bit, how much is a dash. And Nana just smiled. She said, you'll know when it's right. I said, what if I don't? She said, well, that's just life. She taught me so much about faith, that my sexuality, it didn't matter. It was my kindness that had weight. And as we ate that apple pie sprinkled with cinnamon and safety, she glanced at me, said, your mind looks just like mine. And through all my misdirection, she just corrected without making them out as imperfections. When I mucked it up and did something I shouldn't, she said, that's okay, we're having apple pudding. It's been years since that smell has filled a room with its embrace. My nana doesn't cook anymore. No one's yet to take her place. I find my blank bit of paper folded too much to read it clearly. The words have faded as her memory ages, and I realize what seemed like an average afternoon I will forever hold so dearly.
Mm, mm. You're a beautiful soul, Em, and it comes
Thank
out
you.
in your words. It comes out in your appreciation of life, of the people in life, the things of value, the respect. Uh, yeah, butterfly me, as she said. a recipe full of love and wisdom that you are.
Mhm.
You know.
I feel very lucky, and I feel very lucky that I was able to write that piece and read it to
Yeah,
her, before time goes really quickly. So
and I bet you that's a memory that she'll take way beyond her grave.
I printed it just in case she forgot.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, no, I think there's a very, very special place in this universe for you, for your soul, and you really are a beautiful human being, a beautiful person to meet. And
Thank
I
you.
think anybody who crosses your path will walk away so much more enriched. If they can take anything away in from the way you grasp life, I think they'll be all the more better for it.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Really, I really mean that. And um, as I said, I'm a pretty blunt, brutal sort of person. And if someone's a clown, I'll tell them straight out a clown. And if I give credit, believe me, to or praise to anybody,
Mm,
it's well.
yeah.
You
And
know,
I think I really appreciate blunt and direct people. It's interesting because I feel throughout my life I actually was very similar. I was a very firm person, historically very firm, very blunt, very closed off, a lot of anger in my life. Um, and I would often be called cold and cut off, and I've had that feedback time and time again. And I think I was just so sick of getting hurt, of being taken advantage of. And then I went the other way and I just poured my heart and soul into everything. And, that's a really hard space to be in. And I think now, after this year, I've landed in a place of firm but fair.
mm,
And
mm.
I pour my heart out for people. I try my best to see the beauty in the world, but I will be firm on my boundaries and I will fiercely protect the people I love, and I will say things directly. There is no room for
Mm.
flattery. I will call things as they are, but I see the kindness in people as well.
Establishing and maintaining boundaries is also a very difficult thing. I can only relate to that where I always was there for other people, and quite often I'd let them cross those boundaries. It's probably been only in the last 10 years, or probably even less, that making sure those boundaries are there.
Mm, hmm.
I try not to live within those boundaries. I still would give off myself to somebody else, whether it's in friendships or work or whatever, or emotional bonds, because I have faith and trust now that those boundaries pop up when I need them to.
Your little alarm bells.
Yes, because otherwise we can tend to hold back ourselves. And I lived behind a wall after losing my father at such a young age, who I was very close to. I lived behind a wall, and even through my teenage years and adolescent years, I even loved my mother through a wall. And she was a beautiful. She was a widow at 40, and she lived for another 44 years. And in all those 44 years, she never let anybody else into her life. She lived for her three kids, her grandkids, and then later her great grandkids. And yet, I loved her through a wall through my teen years until I was, yeah, quite a young, more than a young adult, for fear
Mm,
of loss. Not because I loved her any less, but for fear of loss. So that constantly reminds me to not be entrapped by my boundaries, but to
mm,
have faith and trust that my boundaries will erect themselves when I need to.
mm. That's it. You don't want it to close you off from love. And I think it's around knowing who has access to you and being intentional about who has access to you. It's not about not letting anyone have access to you.
Yes, yeah, and don't let yourself be used.
Mm,
I'm happy to. I'm now at the stage where I'm happy to. I'll still go and help anybody and everybody, but I'll sort of make sure that I focus my time with people who are appreciative and trying to get themselves out of a hole and move on than somebody who just sits there and lets you carry their cross.
mm, mm.
Happy to reach into the hole and give them a helping hand, but not going to put them on my shoulders and lift them out of the hole anymore, I guess.
Yeah. I have another piece that relates to it. Look at our flow that's happening. I guess this is what happens when you just write about life. But this piece was particularly written about this, which was recognizing the people that I wanted to be open with and recognizing, that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. That I don't have to be closed off and not everyone needs access to me all the time, but there are a few people in my inner circle that I want to know me and I want to be able to love them fully. And the process that took to kind of, I guess, get to that point. So this is called the Queen of Ice. I can be the Queen of Ice, cool, calm, collected, eclectic, but often misinterpreted. You see my demeanor, I don't mean that I'm cold, but I can be hard to read and I'm hard to get close. Too many times in my life where I froze without choice, my body responding in the absence of voice, and the boys didn't notice and the others protest because women don't deal with their issues like this. But when I kicked and screamed, nobody would listen, insisting that I should have just learned my lesson of testing the threshold with clothes that I wore. How dare that I think I could walk home alone. Just a small little girl with a belly of rage, heard boys will be boys again and again, and each time replayed a little less hurt. So why would I speak when I won't be heard? Now silence is my mother tongue, and I don't waste the alphabet. I'll never let my, oh, sorry. Silence is my mother tongue, and I don't waste the alphabet. I'll never let anyone tell me the way I feel is irrelevant, ambivalent to validation. My self-respect is speaking volumes. And that little girl, she's not been gagged. Her words are just evolving. Now I don't kick, I don't scream, I just take a step back. I guess this is the way that I've learned to protect. My mosaic little heart was shattered and beautiful. It saved my life then, but perhaps it's not suitable. As I move through my life with the safety I've nurtured, my future deserves more than this firm reputation. And those who offered warmth, those who got ice and offered warmth that I felt, well, maybe it's time I let the ice melt. It's been a long time since I've read that one.
Ah, the honestly, I don't think I have heard either live or on the show even that you've recited any piece that does not carry valuable lessons, very thought-provoking sentiments for people. I can't say how glad I am that I approached you about coming on the show. I think that was probably in our first conversation, even, right? When I hadn't known you that long, and my very first conversation was about coming on the show, and I'm so glad because honestly, every piece that you've recited here today, everything we've shared in our conversations, I I'm not a fortune teller, but I can bet my bottom dollar it's gonna touch many people in different corners of the world.
Thank you.
You know, again, Tom, wonderfully penned and beautifully spoken. Yeah, we got to and as Butterfly Me says, we got to let that ice melt.
Mm,
I can fully relate to that because I was the Iceman for,
mm.
for most of my life.
The King of Ice.
This,
Yeah.
the and we tend to pain or events in our life. We can tend to put this cloak around us and that we live behind to shroud ourselves from, somewhere we can go to be ourselves away from the world that's waiting to take, you know, cause us pain or take advantages of who we are,
Mm,
the compassion. It hasn't been that long ago since I shed that cloak, or I'm sure at times I still probably pull it out of my pocket and put it around me for the most, but it was probably only 8 to 10 years ago that literally started not pulling that cloak around me tight. And
mm. And it's terrifying and it's vulnerable to let people in and to risk being hurt again. But I think also every time um, you intentionally open yourself and you know the risk that is coming with it, the hurts a little bit less because you know that you have resilience, you know that you can heal through it, and you know that it's worth it. It's worth it to have the depth of relationships.
You're meeting your own inner strength through each trip, so we become less afraid of that vulnerability.
Yeah.
We start believing more of ourselves, and I think the whole it's to me being born into life and trying to hide behind that cloak for fear. It's like going to school with cotton wool in your ears and a blindfold over your eyes.
Mm.
You know,
You- You're not absorbing anything, you're not taking in any new lessons, you're
yeah,
just existing.
you're just wasting oxygen, just going
Mm.
through a concert, a play, just without being an actor in the play.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah.
audience and waste of waste of air, right?
Mm.
Honestly, Em, um, the the substance in the and the content that we even discussed and the substance of the pieces you recite, there's not a word in your recitals that does not shed value to somebody who is listening or who will listen to this
Mm.
in a recording, or whether it's um, even a podcast or YouTube or the Instagram, whatever they watch. Because not all platforms are popular everywhere, right? Like I know through the subcontinent, YouTube is huge because they
Mm.
subsidies and all that. So that's why I created the YouTube, Instagram, and then there's places where podcasts are the go. So I just release it in all those mediums because there's so much in this. What we've been going for an hour and a quarter, what we've been going for, there's so much that people can get from. Really is.
Mm. Thank you.
It's I'm some might say I'm selfish, but I do hope, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I do hope that life takes you in a place somewhere where you will publish your work for people to be able to read. I really do hope that.
Thank you. And never say never. Try not, this whole year has taught me just not to put myself in a box and not to try and spend too much energy on trying to predict the future because we just don't know. We just
Yeah,
don't know where we're going to go.
yeah, and it's good that you've got that openness to what might tomorrow bring, because none of us really know, right? I mean, hell, even know if the sun's going to shine for me tomorrow, right? None of us do.
Mm.
I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Um, I can hope for some things to happen. Like I hope my damn golf ball behaves itself tomorrow and I'm playing golf, but never know.
Yeah,
And Tom just put in a very true comment. Our books write themselves.
I can relate to that a lot. A lot of the time when I try and write something, I can't. And then it will be a random period in time where something just comes and I write it start to
Yeah,
finish.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's important to be open to whatever happens, but whatever does happen, not live in overjoy because it's what we
Mm.
expected, or live in frustration because it was totally different to what we expected.
Mm.
Take it for what it is. Whatever tomorrow brings, take it for what it is. I think it's important to be open-minded in that respect.
It's that lesson of just being present.
Yes, whatever happens, being present. Oh, Em, you're such a what? The words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Mm.
Being present to whatever life brings, and not living behind a cloak, not hiding from it, not trying to deflect and say, "Oh, yeah, that's just a passing thing."
Mm. Mm. Perhaps I will share this piece now, which was about it's confronting a fear I had, a little bit lighter than some of the grief stuff. And I remember I started writing this and I wanted to write something a little bit lighter, but I'm a deep thinker, so I am who I am. But some context of this. So when I was younger, I grew up in the country, and we lived in an old cottage house, and there were those big king moths everywhere, and I loved them. I loved them when I was younger, and then I can't remember what happened, but there became a point and I became terrified of them. So my whole family know me as being someone who's terrified of moths. When they're in the room, I just need to run out. They throw them at me. It's this whole gag piece because I'm just so afraid of these moths, which doesn't make sense because they don't hurt anyone. And so I wrote this piece because I was like, no, okay, why am I even so scared of them? They're such beautiful creatures. So let's lean into that. And this has become one of my favorite pieces, and I don't know why I love it so much, but I really do enjoy reading it.
Before you start there, there's a comment
Mm.
that I want you to hear. This has been a lovely offering. Thank you for sharing your beautiful energy.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. All right, so this one is called Moths. I don't like moths. Chaotic dust, the way they flutter, they climb amongst all of my clutter, reminding me I'm suffocating. I don't like moths. That's what I'm saying. I just find them visually unappealing, unlike their cousins done caterpilling. I find them intrusive. I find them dull. I guess it's kind of how I feel towards myself sometimes. But it wasn't like this when I was younger. I found them perplexing and so much fun. They were on the door of my cottage house. I'd pick them up, move them around. I'd find beauty in their spots and patterns, and I can't recall when that change happened. When I lost my childlike fascination, it started morphing towards frustration. When they'd cast their shadow amongst the light, and I guess I feared that I too might, when we were both just trying to exist amongst a world so pessimistic. And perhaps my detest is just transference, and this insect is undeserving of the way they make me squirm, or a projection of my own chaotic dust. Because truthfully, I mask like they mimic as a form of self-protection, both failing to blend in with the outside world and get by undetected. We both enjoy the dark, and you'll sometimes find us in the closet, and often intimidating demeanor with no capacity to harm, I promise. And so maybe this isn't about moths in the slightest, but more a collection of all the things that make me feel frightened. Like, what if it turns out I was never enough and the world only saw me the way I saw moths? And what if I represent stagnation and an absence of care, and my poetic pollination is in fact just polluting the air? And what if I'm just not the person that you want around, even though I'm the first one responding when the social system is out? We both exist within the dirt and see the things that you don't notice, the slightest change in your smile. These are the weights and bearings of an empath. We don't bring overt beauty to the world and us ourselves, or we don't flourish, but our sacrifices nurture the food chain. And I now see this to be our purpose. And now I want to know more about moths and let fear become my teacher. And maybe in turn I'll learn to love myself as I learn to love this humble little creature.
Let fear be my teacher. That's, to me, life is overcoming what we find challenging, right? Not what
Exactly.
stepping in.
It's the things that you find scary that I think you need to move the closest towards and understand where that fear is coming from.
Again, in that piece within the lines, there were so many thought-provoking lines that one could just really meditate on, you know, find answers in ourselves. If we sat there in silence, just letting those some of those lines in that piece, including that last one, let fear be my teacher, letting that simmer there, in our subconscious. They're lines you can meditate on them. They really are. Your writing has so much depth, so much powerful sentiments, so much. So they're so profound. They're not frivolous rhyme schemes or stuff like that. That's not that I'm criticizing that by any. Credit where credit's due, but the emotion, the message, the power of what you're saying in very eloquent but simple lines, which is great, which is then accessible to somebody whose English might be a second or third language,
Yeah.
but they still understand the same uh, emotion. They still face the same challenges in life than a Shakespeare did, right?
Mm.
It does.
With the human experience, I think transcends generations.
Yes, exactly. And as we said at the start, whether it's our great grandparents' generation or our great grandkids' generation, emotions don't change, right?
Mm.
How we deal with those emotions might change, but the basic emotion of love, of hate, of anger, of passion, of compassion, none of that changes.
Mm.
Right? That's always the same.
Actually, recently had the privilege of reading a very good friend's grandma's autobiography,
Yeah,
and it was incredible to read and just go, we're still experiencing the same things, different platforms, different circumstances, but the primary experience is the same: heartbreak,
yeah,
loss, happiness, identity.
yep. Same pudding, skinned a different way, right?
Mm-hmm. That's it.
it's but yeah, it's I love and I can so relate to your writing too because like through the fear of a moth, how you can write a profound piece. I was at a friend's place and he pulled yeah, last night and he pulls out a book and he reads a piece from my first book um, called the flight of the butterfly where I was up in Cairns or somewhere in the tropics when I was riding around Australia and I sitting there watching this butterfly and then suddenly my mind goes to that journey of that butterfly right down to the caterpillar right down to the
Mm.
chrysalis you know and I sort of wrote basically how that caterpillar just eats away at every leaf and destroys things greedily, taking eating to the point where it's imprisoned in a cocoon.
Mm.
Within that cocoon, that's dormant, that does nothing externally. Internally, obviously, a lot happening, but
Mm.
then out of that emerges this butterfly, and that beauty is only short-lived in that butterfly.
Mm.
Right? So when you wrote about that moth, your fear of moths, and seeing the depth of what came out, I was just relating to. We're so similar in what instigates and what triggers our writing.
Mm.
Is I write through my own life experiences as well, and but not just narrating a story or an event that happened, but being able to pull these lines that really show us the lessons that we can learn from it. That's
You,
enough. That's
you give a poet anything and see that they'll turn it into a life lesson or an emotional journey, a random object.
uh, but there's a lot of people who aren't poets who struggle with that. So they keep falling over the same, tripping over the same stone all the time. And being able to share that wisdom through the talent that you were gifted with to be able to creatively write that. It's not just about the pain of some of the or the joy of something, right? It's what can one learn is what I get out of your poetry.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, that's it. I find that in a lot of my writing there is a natural. I try not structure it too much, but I notice myself do that. I go into something and then I will instinctively pull myself out of it. Even in my writing, will kind of come to a natural lesson or something that I've taken out of it. And that's not intentional. I think it's just the way that my mind processes. It goes deep first and then it pulls itself out.
And that's good. Yes, exactly. And that's exactly how even in counseling or helping somebody should be, right? If I see somebody in a hole, I will jump in into that hole with them so that I can see the problem through their eyes.
Mm,
But what's important is that I don't stay in that hole, that I jump out of that hole and then reach in and help them out of the hole.
mm,
But if I don't jump in that hole with them and see the problem from their eyes, and I was looking down into the hole trying to help them out, I'm only looking at what a textbook would tell me. I'm only looking at what I think they're seeing.
mm. It's a bit of
Uh,
a concept of empathy and sympathy. I think I read something the other day from Brene Brown that was like, sympathy is based on otherness. It's going from my position, I feel sorry that you are over there in your experience while I am over here
mm,
and having a very different experience, where empathy invites us to go over and sit there and go, my heart feels you being here next to you and seeing your pain from where you're
yes,
sitting.
yes. And that's very eloquently put. That's so true. You, you got to see and feel, and that's why, like somebody reciting something or giving you quotes or telling you from a textbook means nothing to me.
Mm,
Opposed to somebody, a close friend who can sit by you, see it from your point of view, then change positions and then help you forward because they truly understand where you come from. And I've used this quite often, many times before. You lose somebody you love, like a mother, for example, and you start telling somebody about, oh yeah, I know, I remember what it was like when I lost my mother. No, you don't know,
mm,
because your relationship to your mother could be very different to my relationship with my
mm.
mother. You might have been very close to your mother, I might not be, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Your ability to deal with emotional loss might be very different to mine. So you don't know. So how about you park your experience?
Mm,
Yes, use it to relate, to try and understand, but come and sit by and try and look at it through my eyes. My
mm,
relationship like with my mother, was it the same as yours? What is my emotional maturity or my emotional intelligence? Is it the same as yours?
mm.
Right? That's why I constantly remind people, remember that life gave birth to the book. The book didn't give life birth to life. The
Mm.
book was written by another person on their journey.
Yeah, I think that is a really powerful thing, is to recognize that. I think some people often fall into the trap of trying to relate by sharing their experience. It's like, rather than sharing your experience, how about you tap into your experience and then sit with that person and hear their story rather than trying to share yours.
Yeah, exactly right. I've been cheated and I've had plenty of very deep emotional bonds. I've been taken advantage of, and I'm sure I've been negligent in many ways as well through relationships. But each of them are unique. And for me, if you were sitting there or somebody else was saying, "Oh yeah, my partner cheated on me," I can't say yes, I remember that. I've got to my bond to my partner and the way she cheated on me might be very different to what this person is going through, and it's important to be able to reference what I felt there, but still see through things and hear, be fully. You said it before. Be present in
Mm,
that. Same as whether it's even lost through natural causes.
yeah, we need to put ourselves aside for a moment.
Yes, yes,
Speaking of breakups, as you for, or I guess relationships and heartbreak, as any emotional person, I do have a few pieces on heartbreak that I can share. Um, so I posted this one last night, but it was the interesting part about this one. I'm just finding it. So, the interesting part about this one was I actually wrote the opening line years ago. I can't even recall when it was, years and years and years ago, and it was just a paragraph. It was a micro poem, and I left it because it never became anything.
yeah,
And then a few months ago, it just eventuated out of nowhere when I was doing a lot of deep reflecting, and I love that it's come back and now become something. And I think it just reminds me, like, don't ever throw away anything, your little scrawlings, your little scribbles that are nothing at the start, sometimes you come back to them and yeah, it took shape in a totally different
Yeah.
way. So this poem is about that process of when you love someone, perhaps you live with someone, you share your life with someone, and then there's a breakup, and then sometimes it's amicable, and sometimes you continue to have a shared respect, and sometimes it goes back to like you never existed or they never existed. And for myself, I've always really struggled with that experience of how does someone be everything and then become nothing. I understand that people's lives separate, but I think for me that there will always be care and a recognition of the life that you shared together. But that's not always the case with some people.
Mm.
So this is called Oblivion. Tear me up and burn me into oblivion. A scrap piece of paper, like I meant nothing to you. Like every word you said never etched my skin, filling up pages of all our memories. And look through me like tracing paper. How is it possible to be less than a stranger when our hearts and our homes were the one for a time? Shred all that we shared as our worlds disentwine. My heart thinks in ink to preserve it for eternity, holding on to lessons, even those that weren't meant for me, but yours is soft lead to ensure my erasure. Well, that's all that I am now, a blank piece of paper. But you still share my words like public pages, tell the world how I was always to blame, and I refrain from challenging because we've all got our narratives, and I refuse to take on all the pain that you're carrying. I kept your book on my shelf with respect and reflection. You were a part of my life, even just for a section. When your new love asked to read, I encouraged with a caveat. You can take home this book, but you can't bring it back here. But for you, it was no mirror, no similar image. When your story of us, it's like it never existed. And that's okay. It's your choice. I truly don't mind. But then you got upset when I continued to write the story of my life where you became a footnote, an afterthought, a mention, no longer a lead role. And my paper plane soared despite the harm of our story. And you couldn't stand that now I was transforming. So tear me up and burn me into oblivion. A scrap piece of paper. Like I meant nothing to you. Or maybe because I meant everything to you. And your memory of that is far too painful.
That's so true. That's so true. That really is. Quite often, it's our pain that we find to mask. We find justifications,
Mm.
and that justification normally comes in the form of faults in the other person.
Yeah, or, people end any kind of, I guess, contact or reconnection with people because it's just too painful. It's too painful to be reminded of that period of your life where I'm someone that I'd rather sit in that pain and discomfort and learn to move with it than just act like it never
Yeah.
existed.
When you posted that video last night, I actually listened to that about three, four times. That really is a beautiful piece because it really is. There's as much as like if it's a heartfelt piece, which it is, but again, there's so much truth, profound truth in each of in a lot of those lines. We really, who was I to you? Was I just that blank bit of paper?
Mm.
That
And now it's just an erasure of that. And it can be years,
yeah.
years that you spend
And
together.
was that was I a blank canvas and you painted your vision of me, not
Mm,
not seeing me for who I am? There's so
mm,
much. There's so much, and when you see an image there start to emerge, that isn't what you expect because you can't accept it. You just burn the page to oblivion.
be gone with it.
Yeah, we see that not just in emotional relations. We see that in friendships. We see that in business relationships. Right? The same lessons exist at different layers of intensity Obviously, if it's an emotional relationship, it's close to our heart, so we're dealing it with on a very personal level.
Mm.
But the business relationship, it's maybe not so, but it has its different connotations. But the
Yeah.
same underlying lessons exist beneath, doesn't it?
But it is interesting the way people, I think, deal with or approach letting things go. I'm someone that I accept that things end, and sometimes I'm the one that's ending it. But I can end things with respect and kindness and go, we will never be part of each other's lives again for whatever reason. But we can have a conversation. We can do that with graciousness and respect, and then we can part ways. You know, this idea of just ghosting or just not showing people that once meant a lot to you, kindness and respect just doesn't make sense to me.
I've actually written poems on that, like, um, and I've had been in many relationships, either marriages or de facto situations, or long-term relationships, the which I've ended, but I've ended, as you said, with integrity.
Mm,
It wasn't the cheating and the doing so forth. It was you'd grown apart, so you walk away. I even walked away from a 20-year marriage, right?
mm,
Once, and for the most part, the 20 years, it was an amazing marriage that people put on a pedestal.
mm,
But there came that point of time where you'd walked as far as you can, and now your parts were in different ways for different parts of growth. The kids had grown up and so forth. And I walked. Most people
mm,
thought I was an idiot, but I don't have any a moment of regret. With most of my past relationships, I still share good friendships with them. Like if they were in town, we'd grab dinner. If they live interstate or if they here, we'd grab dinner or have a chat. Nothing else. Just no different to me having dinner with you or somebody else
mm,
from just as friends. The and my whole thing is, I loved you once. Yes, now we've grown apart. You haven't changed. You're still the same person that I fell in love with, and I'm still the same person you fell in love with.
mm,
Yes, I might not be walking a common path, but I haven't changed. So why now suddenly am I an asshole, or why are you somebody now that I can't tolerate, or can't give respect to, or can't give credit to, or appreciate who you are?
mm,
Just
mhm.
why, right? There is no need for that bitterness. There shouldn't be, right?
And I think if there is bitterness, it's something that you need to work through. Like by yourself, there's no point putting that out into the world.
It is something that's we're harboring, that's unjustly or unrealistically harboring, because it's our perceptions, our views, as we said before. Because to camouflage, to mask my own pain, I will put these images of you, and then in voicing it out or sharing it to the world, it somehow seems to give me uh, a sense of justification, I guess,
Mm,
falsely. But all
yeah,
it, and that's why, and then it becomes so ugly that you can't stand each other's company.
yeah.
Shouldn't it? Doesn't need to be, right?
It doesn't need to be. And we have choice in that, I think, around how we rebuild after something like that.
Exactly. To say that we have been going
It has. It's been truly the time has flown, and thank you for everyone that all your encouraging words. And yeah, I've been tuning into the show as well. So I'm one of those people that watches it back later. So thank you.
2 hours we've gone. You wouldn't think so, would you?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'll probably see you next week at an open mic or something like that. But thank you, and we'll chat later. Thank you.
See everyone. Bye.
Stay safe, stay blessed, everybody. Till the next fortnight when we got the next show.